grab your butt flaps and your bowling pin hats. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau.
Tangent cube of science. There's a couple of snakes in there.
You got a couple of snakes in that tangent cube there. So, as always, well, this week we actually do have the Watcher back with us. So come on, buddy. How you doing? You were sick? What was the deal? You back with us now? You get to listen to the last episode?
Did you get the space flu?
Yeah, you got the space flu?
Yeah, the space flu. So space stations, much like Earth, are constantly bombarded with space viruses. And I caught one of those.
Ah. That's terrible.
Oh, man, did it punched you in the space jeans?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we got some good emails, got some responses from the last episode, and the Watcher was able to catch up listening to the last episode as well. So we are going to continue some of that theme this week on the Great Pyramid and the actual rabbit holes that are in it. Those shafts are actual rabbit holes.
They are rabbit holes.
They are actually rabbit holes in the Great Pyramid. But first,
why four?
Why four? As always, we have space weather news. Solar wind approaches the Earth. A stream of solar wind is about to hit Earth's magnetic field. Estimated time of arrival, February 20th. The gaseous material is flowing from a trans-equatorial fissure in the sun's atmosphere. Arctic skywatchers can expect minor geomagnetic storms and auroras mixed with bright moonlight when the fast-moving stream arrives. And also Mercury at sunset. Tonight, right after the sun goes down, step outside and look west into the sunset. Mercury is returning to the evening sky. This picture was taken of the innermost planet shining just above the 32-meter radio telescope at the Turin Center for Astronomy. And I will put this picture in the show notes. Mercury is normally overwhelmed by the sun, but as February comes to a close, Mercury is emerging from the glare. The view will improve every night for the rest of the month as the planet climbs higher in the sunset sky, reaching a maximum elongation or distance from the sun of 18 degrees on February the 27th and 28th. The best time to look is 30 to 45 minutes after sunset. Mercury often has a pink or orange hue as it is filtered by the same low atmosphere that gives the sunset its colors. Scanning the horizon with binoculars can help you locate it. Once found, Mercury is easy to see with the unaided eye.
Sweet.
And one more, super snow moon. There's a full moon tonight, the biggest and brightest of 2019. According to folklore, it is the snow moon. According to science, it is a super snow moon, inflated in size and luminosity because it occurs on the near side of the moon's orbit. Full moons vary in size because the moon's orbit is not a circle, it's an ellipse. One side of the moon's orbit, called perigee, is 50,000 kilometers closer to the Earth than the other side, apogee. Today's supermoon becomes full just 6 hours away from perigee, a coincidence that makes it almost 8% wider and 16% brighter than the average full moon. So that is all from spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news.
You fellas up north ought to go out and look at the sky tonight. That's terrible at that.
We'll get better.
I gotta get to work on it.
Yeah.
Go out.
It's a good way to die. You go out at the sky at night in the north, yeah. All right. So I have an email from the Grand Watcher about the last episode. He titled it,
You're wrong.
He titled it, Why For?
Why for?
1. The Y4 was a very popular and talented rock band that played the Northeast Wisconsin area when I was in my late teens and early 20s. 2. This entire episode got me thinking, what is it about those of us who explore? His wife he says, my wife repeatedly asked me why I care about such useless information. What possible difference can it make in your life? What would change? I realized that I don't know. I am just driven to find out the answers to these mysteries. As you know, in my case, it's aliens. But I hung on each word while you read, anxiously awaiting a new clue. Why? Why are only certain of us explorers and or scientists, especially when theory overrides fact? What if all these shaft changes were really just fuck-ups? The chambers weren't for religious purposes or burial, so sometimes maybe they just said, fuck it, it's close enough.
That's great. I love that question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know.
I realized that I don't know. The Watcher says that voice for my mom was perfect. Thank you, Watcher. I have spent many hours talking to your mom. I know how to do her voice. I can totally see her asking that.
I think it's really cool, though, that there are just certain people that just wonder endlessly about these things that most people don't care about at all.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny, and this is why, at the same time, we like to make fun of nerds while being nerds.
Yeah.
Like, we call ourselves nerds, but we're all, we like to make fun of nerds because they care about
Yeah.
useless information.
Yeah.
We always try to find a use for it, though.
Right. Well, that's the thing about science, isn't it? That like, it always pays off in the end.
Yeah.
Like, even like, what you call like pure research has no conceivable, somebody's going to do research and has no conceivable, profitable,
Purpose,
profitable thing.
And then out pops Velcro.
That's right.
And microwaves.
Liposuction.
So you never know.
A little Men in Black lingo there for you guys.
The the mystery of the shafts may lead us to an incredibly new power plant.
That's right.
Who knows? It may just satisfy our curiosity to find out all the details about them.
That's true. All right, so still on the line of space weather news. This is just a news story that I saw this week. Police release footage of UFO during storm. Also aliens. Grand Watcher, right? This is your deal here. It's your shtick. A video recording of a strange light in the sky over Australia was posted online this week by Broome Police. The footage, which was recorded in Kimberley District, Western Australia during a thunderstorm, shows an illuminated circular object that briefly appears in the sky, moves, and then fades away. After reviewing CCTV at Town Beach of last night's storm, it appears we were not alone. Officers with the Western Australia Police Force wrote on Facebook. But could this really be an otherworld visitor? Or is something else going on? If you look closely at the bottom right of the frame, you can see a car moving off in perfect sync with the light in the sky. It is likely that the UFO is actually the lens flare from the car's headlights.
Of course.
Right. That's a pretty cool picture, though. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think? Are we alone?
I don't think we're alone.
No, I don't think we're alone.
There's a couple ways I don't think we're alone. One is I don't think we're alone in the sense that there are possibly other beings around that are either non-physical, but or in some physical manner that we don't understand, that interact strangely in ways that we don't understand.
Right.
So, in other words, spirits.
Yeah.
And I also think we are not alone in the sense that there are life forms around our area of space, like those little jellyfish things, the horseshoe crab things that are swimming around in
space crabs.
Space crabs, that say live in the high upper atmosphere of Earth, or just outside of the what is classified as the atmosphere of the Earth.
Yeah.
Maybe live within the magnetic field of the Earth or something like that.
Right. Live in the orbital area they call microgravity, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's possible.
Low Earth orbit. Yeah. And why not?
And I think it's also possible that there may be other hominid types like longheads.
Yes.
So we're not alone in that sense. And then in the larger universe scheme of things, I think it's highly probable that there is another intelligent form of consciousness or life form out there elsewhere in the universe. Whether or not they've been visiting us in the past is debatable.
Right.
And seems to me the probability for that is extremely low. But
Oh, yeah?
I mean, just strictly in terms of probability, based on distances and all of
what
that
we
stuff.
know about physics.
Yeah. So I mean, there could be other ways of space travel. Why would they come here and then hide themselves? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Prime directive.
The prime directive could be that. No, I just think that the probability of that is lower, much lower.
Yeah. Well, the probability that we've been visited is definitely lower than the probability of them existing in the first place.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
to answer the question, are we alone, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
No.
I definitely don't think we're alone in terms
Right.
of intelligent life in the universe. Are they cruising over here? You know, have our
Yeah.
neighbors come to visit us?
Right.
Are we alone in the sense that our neighbors haven't come close to our house?
Can we borrow some sugar?
I need your gold, your metals, and your atmosphere. And your Coors Light.
And your Coors Light.
Give me all your beers and smokes technologies.
Oh, man. We're going to have to post that video sometime.
Yeah.
Beers and Smokes Technologies video. God.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. I think that I think that I really like the idea of paleo contact, but there's just no way of knowing what we're really looking at. You know, like I've always thought that the evidence for some kind of visitation of some sort was high, but the more you look into it, the more you realize that they could be talking about people that are from Earth. They just don't know it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Other hominids or...
So that's what I'm saying. I tend to lean towards what's more probable in my mind.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not totally discounting the possibility that we were visited by intelligent beings from another planet.
Yeah.
Or that even, let's just take the idea of evolution, you know, and say, well, it's totally true.
Okay.
This is how it works.
Yeah.
It seems probable that the evolution on multiple planets in a planetary system would be similar because they would be sharing stuff all the time from asteroidal impacts and
Right.
all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. They're sharing bits and fragments of the viruses and the microbiology and everything that can survive the travel of space to then later develop into similar DNA structured beings. So there could be like the Anunnaki type people that come from a similar planet that's in the system somewhere.
Yeah. If there was a progenitor world, like the
Right.
Sumerian story of Tiamat,
Right.
was the mother of life, was destroyed, but then all life that forms on other planets later on comes from fragments of her.
Right. She was
Yes.
exploded and she's in the asteroid belt and,
Yes.
and she's
The
pummeling
comets.
everybody.
Pieces of her oceans are the comets.
Yep.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
So that you could end up in a scenario where you got these Anunnaki, you know, large, you know, giant type people who live extremely long lives on their quite different atmosphere and planetary, you know, orbit system that come here and then like, you know, merge their DNA or do some DNA editing of the hominids on this planet to sort of make people like us.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But
Or even Mars, like.
yeah, I just tend to believe the probable idea is that you know, the paleo contact was really, you know, advanced beings on Earth that were traveling to other areas of Earth with less advanced beings on
Right.
it.
Coming out of the sky and making them think they were-
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've lost so much in translation that, like, I keep going back to this idea that the word God,
Yeah.
like, where does it even come from? Like, it could have just been what they called themselves, this particular civilization.
Right.
Just like we call ourselves Americans or humans.
Right.
You know, that's the English word for what we call ourselves, right?
Yeah.
If there was some breakaway civilization or something that, you know, living under the ice sheets in Antarctica that hasn't come out or whatever for so long, they finally come, they're ridiculously technologically advanced, and then they show up and say, we are the you know, it's like
that word becomes
like, yes, these people, those things that have the badass technology and are huge,
right?
You know, whatever they are.
Yeah. We worship
and Bob.
We worship the Rapuble.
The Rapuble. And they show up in a worship.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically command you to do what they want.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of a breakaway civilization of some kind. I mean, you know, why should this be limited to this time period too?
Right.
You know,
the breakaway civilization could have left Earth
Yeah.
thousands of years ago.
or that the Viracochas, so to speak, of the ancient world were the remnants of a breakaway civilization that came out and tried to reestablish the technological or just reboot civilization after a cataclysm, you know.
Right.
So
That's kind of what I end up thinking when you start to look at the, you know, the case for catastrophes in the geologic record, in the archaeological record, in the I don't know what to call this, but the records of the, you know, the writings.
Yeah.
I guess that's archaeological.
yeah,
They talk about all these destructions. So you start to put those things together and you see, well, maybe civilization goes back much further because our most recent, you know, catastrophic destructive things seem to be taking place further back than what we see as the first civilization. But
Right.
they were all writing about all these destructive forces that were happening all
Yeah.
over the world. So perhaps those were legacies that came from longer ago than that.
Yeah.
And then it seems more probable that in that great antiquity, there would be areas of the world where there were completely, you know, really people living in the Stone Age walking around in butt flaps,
Yes.
right? And then there would be other areas where technology could have been far advanced, and they sort of like we practice, like, well, let's not mess with the tribes over there in Brazil or where,
Right.
you know, wherever they are,
Yeah.
in these jungles. Let's not go try to,
or that one off the coast of India
yeah.
where they try to kill anybody that comes on shore.
Right. I mean, we could just go in there with suits of freaking modern armor,
Right.
and just be like, okay, guys, I'm invincible to your arrows.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, you can't burn me with that torch.
Right. Right, but we don't because
And I don't know if I agree with that. I kind of think that that's kind of effed up.
that we don't talk to them.
That we don't. Yeah.
Well, the reason they all, as far as I could tell from the last time I was reading about this, the reason they try to kill anybody who comes on shore is because when it happened before, they had an epidemic of sicknesses that they didn't have to deal with. So the last time they were contacted, it wiped out a shitload of them, and now they
Yeah.
now they think that we're cursed or something. Whatever they think, they just
Right.
they try to kill anybody that comes close because
But there is this sort of people think, and I've talked to some people that actually think this, like, oh yeah, we shouldn't. You know, they live in this.
oh yeah, right,
You know,
yeah,
and I start it's like people think that, well, we shouldn't really bother them. They're at one with nature. You know, they're doing the whole teepee and like living off the land thing, and it's beautiful, and they're not polluting and whatever.
right,
And I strongly disagree with that. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, they're what is their what's their like average lifespan?
yeah,
Probably in their 30s.
right. What's their infant mortality rate?
What's their infant mortality rate? What you know, when their babies get sick and die,
Yeah.
there's just nothing they can do. You know, they have incredible hardship that you can't possibly imagine.
right?
Yes, they are trying to protect themselves by stabbing anybody that comes near them in a canoe
Yeah,
to preserve their way of life, but they don't know that their whole way of life could be preserved in a much greater way
yeah.
by you know, just medicine in general, like
Yeah.
just take, you know, medical advances.
Right. Well, and there's the historical precedent of any less advanced civilization that comes into contact with a greater, more advanced, at least technological civilization ends up being mostly destroyed by it. But then you have to look at like, what do you mean by destroyed? You mean their way of life has totally changed? Yes.
Yeah, thank God. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to make that judgment call. I'm sure that just like we have in our civilization now, people who, you know, like long for the old days when things weren't as complicated.
Right.
So you've always got people like that.
Right. Well, we long for what we remember as the good stuff of the old days.
Right.
But not the fact that if you got the cold, you might just die.
Right. Yeah.
So here's another interesting argument to think about. What if there's something about those people that they are like something about maybe the way they think or something culturally inherited or even genetically inherited about their brains or something that they could like excel
us.
and exactly.
Yeah.
Like if we brought them into the 21st century, what if those people end up like designing the engines that can take us to the stars or curing cancer, et cetera, et cetera? Like you don't know. It's like look at what Japan was able to do in 50 years, right? Like would we want to say, well, we wanted to preserve their culture, so we didn't give them any,
Yeah, I agree. It's a two-way street, and it's there are ups and downs for everything. So it's a hard call to make, and I think that's why people just prefer to not make the call.
If it was my call, I would say, let's go in there with suits of armor and just like give them some technology to deal with.
Yeah,
not attack any of them, but just go and like show them like we mean them no harm.
Yeah,
we're in like these suits. They can't harm us. We're humans.
Yeah,
we'll give them some stuff, and then we'll leave.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep doing it. And
and there's precedent for that. The cargo cults of the Pacific Islands. Like those people wanted them to come back, tried to make them come back by building.
Yeah, or it would be an interesting study to say, how could we do this? Because we're going to need to learn how to approach hostile other civilizations. Like if we end up being a cosmic society, or civilization, we're going to need to learn how to approach hostile, intelligent beings.
Yeah.
Right? That are trying to preserve their way of life.
Yeah.
And perhaps, if we're more powerful than them, we still want to be able to get in there and to befriend them and show them we mean them no harm.
Yeah. We need to get good at that.
We need to get good at that. Yeah. And we've got a couple of ways we can test it without. Yeah. If we did it right. We had a group of scientists and things to do it right, to where we could be sure, say, we didn't spread diseases to them. Yeah. Like, in other words, we're in hazmat suits and whatever, and armor and stuff first. And like, let's take a blood sample and like, let's see what's going on. And the Watcher says everyone remembers the work ethic of the 40s and 50s, but no one remembers how scary polio was. Good point. Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. And if we showed up like that, we would look like we were wearing spacesuits. Yeah. And then we might see some drawings of us on caves.
Right. Wearing spacesuits.
Wearing spacesuits. That's right.
Right. In order to not infect them with whatever.
Very good point, Watcher.
Yeah. Yep.
Damn. You should be the host on this show.
We need to get the Watcher live in the studio again. We did that once. We need to do it again.
Yeah. Except he can't look anything up out here with this crappy.
I know. It's a Watcherless Watcher program. It's like when you have the Watcher live.
Now we have 3 snakes in here that are going to be more wrong than ever. Okay, I have one news story before we get to this break. A beautiful disaster. Head injury reveals hidden talent. This is by I4 CBS Denver. A bang to the head changed a Colorado man's life by revealing a hidden talent. Doctors say pianist Derek Amato is one of the few people in the world to have experienced the rare phenomena called acquired savant syndrome. ASS. Sorry, that's my acronym, not theirs. He says the music is in his mind. He sees it in his head, and his fingers do the rest. Amato has a gift that came about in an unexpected way. 12 years ago, he had an accident in the swimming pool. I miscalculated diving in the shallow end and hit the bottom of the shallow end on this side of my head and damaged the back end, said Amato. After recovering from the accident, he was at a friend's house and walked over to a keyboard, and suddenly, without ever playing the piano before, he began playing and playing.
Wow.
The trauma to the head unlocked something unique inside Amato's brain. Acquired savant syndrome has been described in articles and studies as when a tragedy turns you into a genius.
Yeah.
At Classic Pianos on South Broadway in Denver, Amato told CBS 4's Rick Salinger that black and white squares appear in his mind when he's at the piano.
Whoa.
I just follow what the blocks tell me to do. I do my best to take those notes and put them into playing, said Amato. His talented arms are tattooed with musical notes, which he cannot comprehend. Reading music seems confusing for me. I tried to learn a couple of different times. He says despite not being able to read music, he's aware that he has been given a precious gift, and he tries to give back to those who have spent hard times on the streets of Denver, as he once did. So he was like, homeless in Denver for a while or whatever, and now he has this skill, and he just like he's a badass piano player after he banged his head.
Yes.
So I wanted to test this in the tangent cube. Here, turn around.
Hit
you with this.
all right.
This cup here.
Okay.
Oh God! All right. Now, let's play this keyboard.
Nothing's happening.
You gotta play it right there where all these are.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely felt the after you whacked me on the back of the head.
Oh, you gotta level up.
Yeah, yeah.
Acquired savant syndrome.
Acquired
Yes.
savant syndrome. Whacked on the back of the head, become a genius. Normally that's the other way around. But that reminded me, that story when you were reading it, reminded me of like, I spent a while looking into, there's a whole category of medical anomalies along those lines of people who received major head injuries and then strange things happened. Entire personalities change, There's one guy, I can't remember the exact details, but one guy got he had a metal pole basically went through his skull, and it didn't kill him. The watcher says Phineas Gage, the dude completely was a totally different person. Rail worker in the 1800s, the watcher says, and major head injury, like should have killed him. Basically, you got a pole or a nail or whatever it was going through your brain. And he survived. Yeah, so he says the pole went through his frontal lobe. So he survived it, and he was a totally different person. And I think he became a huge asshole. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there are other ones like that. Yeah, so he became just a huge dick. Very mean. And he wasn't like that before this happened. He was totally, watch says rage loss, fits of rage and loss of emotional control. There are other ones where people, like lose a whole section of their brain. I think we've talked about some of this before, where they lose a whole section of their brain and they have all these memories are gone, and then they return anomalously. And remember, your brain doesn't grow back if it's damaged, right? So how do memories come back if you've lost them due to massive head trauma?
Yeah, that.
I mean, this is part of the thing about.
I'm one of those people that I don't think memories are
stored in the brain,
necessarily stored with physical matter.
Right. Exactly. That's what the evidence points to.
Right.
And then, of course, there are people that just have almost no brain at all, and they're still functional.
But I've been like skirt derping myself on this whole idea of the, the physics and then the non-physical consciousness stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just still trying to figure out like the good questions to ask.
Yeah.
About physics and that. So
right. We might get into some of that at the end of the show. We went on a what do we got? What's the time here?
Well, we're ready for a break. But
okay. We went on we told you guys the last podcast for Kyle's birthday, we go on treasure hunts, basically artifact sifting. We go somewhere and bring our screen and do some digs and try to find some arrowheads. And we were doing that, and I brought my little sampler recorder with us, and
I brought beers.
Kyle brought beers. And there was whiskey down there. So in the truck ride on the way down there, I just set up the sampler in between us, and we basically had our normal long drive car conversation with the recorder going. And we talked about this, and then we got down there, and we started drinking whiskey and beers and wine. And I set up the recorder. Now, we basically recorded about a 2-hour thing. And we got into some of these questions of like about consciousness and how to test for it and everything like that. So we might go into some of that at the end of the show. But first, I want to continue on the topic of the pyramids, which we will do after we take this
we
break.
got to talk about pyramids.
Yeah.
We can just publish that thing. We don't need to do it again. That's why I didn't go into detail.
Yeah. That's true. We could just publish it.
I just want to delete the part after I drank the full bottle of wine and was at my third beer. From there on out, we can maybe do that. We can send that to the private emails of the people who donate to our pyramid scheme.
If you guys want to hear if you guys want to hear Bots Late Night 2 with us, super hammered, flipping out about shit.
Yeah. If you're kind enough to donate to our podcast in our pyramid scheme, we'll be mean enough to send you that kind of stuff.
We will punish you for donating by sending you this drunk podcast we did. It's a great incentive to donate to our pyramid scheme. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about pyramids.
We speak to annoy the Enlils of the world. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. In the Tangent Cube, a very small bubble.
A very small bubble.
A hibernation cave for snakes.
Yeah, the good thing we're not real snakes is we'd be hibernating all winter. There'd be no podcast.
That's why we have a heat lamp.
That's right. Oh, that's true. That's right.
It's kind of gets you warmed up.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a bunch of other details and information about the entire Gantenbrink store situation, the Great Pyramid, and we got questions from people asking about, later studies, like for instance, the scan pyramids stuff. So we're going to get into some of that, but first let's go. This is from Bibliotheca Pleiades.net, which is a good site for all kinds. They just have all kinds of stuff. But this basically is just called it's their Gantenbrink's door web page. I don't think this one is. I think the latest stuff on this is 2002, but we have later stuff later. So anyway, what's behind the door? There is much speculation about what will be found behind the doors, and I'd like to take a moment to put the tower's online viewpoint. I'd appreciate any feedback or opinions you may have on it. Personally, I do not think that chambers of any description will be found when the outer blocking stones, however many there may be, are finally penetrated. For the sake of argument, let's assume that the Great Pyramid was replanned during its construction, that there was a time when the Queen's Chamber, so-called, was intended to be the main burial chamber. We know that the blocking stones in the northern and southern shafts are equidistant from the Queen's Chamber. Could they have been placed close to where the shafts would have exited on a smaller scale pyramid?
Already came up with that theory.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was cool, because you came up with that.
Was that an email?
No, this is from
the
website. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I just thought it was cool that you came up with it, and okay.
Very cool.
We have a tentative parallel for this if we examine the shafts leading from the King's Chamber. On the 12th of February, 1837, John Perring came across the mouth of the King's Chamber northern shaft on the north face of the Great Pyramid. Perring and his men set to work clearing the shaft. It actually turned out to be a forced passage with dimensions 3 feet by 2 feet 9 inches, which followed the actual channel, or shaft, for 37 feet, after which the channel continued on with the original dimensions of 9 by 9 or 8 by 8 inches. We have no idea who originally, this is the Man-Killer Tunnel. This is what Gantenbrink called the Man-Killer Tunnel. We have no idea who originally forced this passage from the north face or what obstacles were found. On the 21st of May, 1837, Perring found the mouth of the King's Chamber southern shaft in the same relative position on the south face of the pyramid, and once again, work began to clear the shaft. Not far in, so on this side, there is no tunnel, right? The southern shaft, King's Chamber shaft, exits, and there's no destruction to it by quote-unquote unknown plunderers, as Gantenbrink called them. Not far into the core masonry, Mr. Hill found a piece of iron blocking the way. So this is a famous iron plate that was found in the Great Pyramid that has sort of, people have speculated that this shows that whoever built the pyramid had iron, even though they're not supposed to have had any kind of iron tools or access to iron metal unless it was meteoritic or whatever. Let's see. From its position, it was not thought possible for it to have been placed there following the original construction of the pyramid. In other words,
after the original construction. It had to be during.
Right. Having cleared this obstacle at a distance of 7 feet from the surface, Hill found the way blocked by a large stone. Once removed, we are told that air rushed into the king's chamber. Could this have been a slab like those found in the queen's chamber shafts? Is it the case that we will eventually find iron plates and then nothing? We know that the queen's chamber shafts do not appear to have exits on the exterior of the pyramid. Do we know for sure that the king's chamber shafts penetrated all the way through to the original polished exterior casings blocks or through them? Which is, no one knows if they, like, when the original casing stones were there, was it like I've always envisioned this, like this perfectly smooth, beautiful casing, and there's these little square holes on the north and south sides.
Right.
Like way up there that no one can see. Or were they closed off? No one knows. Right.
Well, the fact that they're not full of sand, or are they full of sand?
Well, they were, but they've had
they haven't been uncovered
years.
for so long. Yeah, I guess.
This hypothesis does have two flaws. Firstly, the height at which the queen's chamber shafts would have reached the exterior of the smaller pyramid would have been at roughly the same elevation as Campbell's chamber, which is the highest of the relieving chambers of the king's chamber, right? The relieving chambers. Campbell's chamber is the one at the top. Is it likely
with the half cartouche?
Yeah, that one's below. Campbell's chamber is not the one that had it. Yeah. Is it likely that the builders would have continued to construct the queen's chamber shafts to their intended height if they knew that the pyramid was to be enlarged anyway? So we sort of went through this, like, this idea of like if these were something that was original for what the original plan was, and then they changed the plan, why would they have continued to build them? Yeah.
And
why were they blocked off but not really blocked off? Like, why didn't they, if they pulled a block out that had the shaft in it in the queen's chamber and then put a new one in, why did they still cut the shaft all the way through it right up to the very edge where it was just and left a few inches instead of just sticking a block in there and calling it done?
Right. It seems like the shaft needed to be almost all the way out on both ends.
Right.
So you had the casing stone that
closed it off.
That closed it off.
Yeah.
And the king's chamber probably had the same, but for some reason they didn't close off the shafts in the king's chamber.
Right.
Which is
weird. I do think the question of whether the shafts exited the casing stones is a good one for multiple reasons. Like, number one, who did the casing? Is it the original builders?
Know.
Right.
But whoever did the casing of the queen's chamber didn't necessarily have to be the original builders of the queen's chamber either.
Right.
But the fact that they put casing stones on the exterior of the larger pyramid shows that, like, whoever did that must have known something about the smaller pyramid underneath. So it suggests that if those stones that are the same as the casing stones that are inside the queen's chamber shafts, whoever built the larger pyramid planned to put casing stones on them.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, otherwise, why would they use the same limestone? It seems like the builders would have known.
Right.
The builders of the larger pyramid would have known that the casing stones were on the smaller pyramid, so that they copied it once they got to the full size. The other question I have about that is, if the smaller pyramid is a smaller pyramid and it did have casing stones on it, and they did not remove the casing stones to build the larger pyramid, then that is an incredible engineering feat.
I thought the same thing, because your whole new larger pyramid would want to slide off those casing stones.
Yeah,
There's nowhere to grab.
You no longer have this idea of like, well, the whole thing is supporting.
Yeah.
Now you have this larger pyramid on the outside with this massive, heavy top.
Right.
Which is above the point of the smaller pyramid.
Yeah.
That's going to be trying to crush those thin, relatively speaking, thin walls between the smaller pyramid and the exterior of the large pyramid.
Yeah. Then there's the possibility that it was a step pyramid, that the smaller version was a step pyramid.
Yep.
Now, if you go look at that, I think it's in Mayun. Watch or check me on this. Mayun, Mayun, I think is how it's spelled. But there's a pyramid, but basically the whole exterior sheathing has fallen off of it. Then it was a triangular pyramid. It fell off of it, and there's this Babel Tower thing left.
Yeah.
It would have been something like that, where the original construction, the smaller construction or whatever that had the Queen's Chamber or whatever, was not a pyramid at all, but some kind of tower that did actually go all the way to the top, and they've built this triangle over top of it.
But it's interesting that the Queen's shafts go out to these specific distances, which kind of, you can
Right, I
draw
guess-
lines and say, well, okay, there could
I guess
be.
what I'm implying is that maybe all of the interior structures that we know of, all the interior structures that we know about now, were able to fit in this original tower style construction, like you see of the Mayan pyramid, because it's tall, right? The thing is tall. It's just not a pyramid. It's like think of a ziggurat, but then stretch it out in the height direction.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 3 steps, and it's very tall.
Right. So first they built the most difficult thing to build out of stone, and then they covered it with the easiest thing to build out of stone.
Yeah.
And that's the most difficult way to build the easiest thing out of stone.
Right. That's right.
Dang it. No matter how you look at it, pyramids are hard.
Okay. Is it likely that the builders would have continued to construct the Queen's chamber shafts to their intended height if they knew that the pyramid was to be enlarged anyway? Then there again, it is possible to hypothesize that the pyramid was not actually constructed level by level, and that the shafts were essentially complete when the decision was taken to extend the pyramid. Secondly, Rudolf Gantenbrink discounts the idea that niches discovered in the upper reaches of the southern King's chamber shaft could have held a blocking stone similar to that found in the Queen's chamber southern shaft. See the item Cheops niches on the cyber drawings page. Yeah, okay. We shall never know if there was a similar niche in the upper reaches of the northern King's chamber shaft because it would have been destroyed by the force tunnel found by pairing. However, when you look at Gantenbrink's website, he says that the top and the right side of the shaft did survive. Okay, was it medium, not Mayan? Pyramid at medium is the one that is like a tower where the exterior thing collapsed.
Midum.
Or Midum, yeah. Medium? Midum. Cool.
Yeah, that's your dumb.
I'm dumb.
Sorry.
Yeah. So he says that there are no niches on the wall that does survive the tunnel cutting, right? So the man killer tunnel that he called it, the one that Pairing found, the top and the right side of the shaft. If you're standing on the pyramid looking down at the shaft, the top and the right side, or whatever, survive or maybe it's the top and the left side. I don't know which side the shaft's on. But anyway, whoever dug the tunnel dug it alongside the shaft. So 2 sides of the shaft still exist, and they were able to take measurements of angles. And he said that similar niches were not there in the place where they should have been if they were in that shaft as well as the other one. So, okay. Okay, so introduction to Gantenbrink articles. The Queen's Chamber air shaft investigation and Great Pyramid ventilation scheme items below first appeared here in 1998. They were written using information supplied by Rudolf Gantenbrink and published with his kind permission. They reflect his views on the situation subsequent to his exploration of the shafts in the Great Pyramid and are retained here as historical background information. Please note that the, quote, air shaft, unquote, and the, quote, ventilation scheme, unquote, items must be read in the context of the situation back in 1998. The first section highlights disagreements with statements made by Dr. Hawass at the time regarding further investigation of the air shaft door. The second section provides an insight to the state of the ventilation system installed in 1992. Okay, so Queen's Chamber air shaft investigation. Rudolph issued the following statement in April of 1998. The word recent in the first sentence must be taken in that context. The statement was as follows. In a recent meeting between Dr. Zahi Hawass and myself in Cairo, I explained to Dr. Hawass several details related to the so-called air shafts inside the Cheops pyramid. One of the issues discussed with Dr. Hawass was reported on an interview from theguardian.net. Dr. Hawass, we are not discovering anything in the Great Pyramid. There is nothing really remaining to be discovered inside.
Fool.
Even though we were prepared to investigate the so-called door inside the pyramid that was found by Gantenbrink, we found that in Gantenbrink's report where he recently visited me, looking more closely at the videotape, we see that there really is no crack or an open area that we can send a robot. We found that there is no shaft or small area underneath this stone to send a small robot or anything, and this means that we are not going to be able to investigate and see what's behind it. So the Guardian asks, there's no crack at the bottom of the slab found by the robot at the end of the shaft that would allow even a small camera? Dr. Hawass says, there's no crack on the bottom, exactly. This is what the media created, and I never received a proper report from Gantenbrink because of the problems that we had with him. But when I met him last week and when he showed me the videos here, what it looks like in there, we did not really see any crack in the fitting, and therefore it is very difficult to decide to do anything further with this. So Gantenbrink says, this interview has and might further lead to misunderstandings. For this reason, I would like to clarify the following. I had a meeting with Dr. Hawass in March of this year in Cairo. The reason for this meeting was to inform Dr. Hawass personally about additional still unpublished facts and observations made during my work in 1992 and 1993 on the so-called air shafts. In this meeting, I have pointed out that a further investigation of the closure stone at the end of the southern lower shaft by means of a fiber optic cable has little chance to achieve the expected results. This is due to tremendous costs and the poor results due to light source limitations that can be expected in the worst case. The fiber optic procedure has never been suggested by myself and therefore is indeed a true media creation. Nevertheless, in that meeting, I have informed Dr. Hawass equally about a far better high-tech method for a possible continuation of exploration. I do not at all agree with Dr. Hawass's statement that was probably intended differently, that there is nothing really remaining to be discovered inside. It is and remains a fact that only further research will allow this conclusion to be drawn. I am convinced that Dr. Hawass, especially after our meeting, also sees the immediate need to solve the questions that my work from 1992 and 1993 raised. When this item first appeared on the Usenet, clarification was requested on what the, quote, far better high-tech methods, unquote, were. Rudolph replied as follows: "It is a bit complicated. One of the procedures works by injecting a specified quantity of gas through the gap below the door by means of capillary stainless steel tubes, one for injection and one for the analysis. If there is a purpose-built volume, which is expected to be relatively tight, we will get a certain gas concentration after some time in relation to the volume that we can measure. So we can determine the size of the volume as well. If there is just the nucleus behind that, which is like open joints, the gas will just decrease in its concentration progressively. The equipment for the procedure is worth about $2 million and could be purchased from one of my sponsors, free of costs, basically. Another procedure, I am very much convinced that we only see the backside of the door. If an engineer is supposed to fix something on a stone slab without glue and anchors, he would do the following. 1, the thing that has to be fixed has 2 bolts fixed to it. 2, the bolts are inserted into 2 holes which are drilled through the slab so that they penetrate the slab through the backside for some centimeters. 3, now the bolts can be bent 90 degrees to fix the whole arrangement safely. So what we see from the backside are only the bent bolts, and that is exactly what we see on this door. To find out if this really is the case, the robot can put a current to one of the copper bolts. If this current can be measured at the other bolt and we have a closed circuit, we know that the main part, and so the functional one of the door, is located on the other side. There are many more procedures, so to take the 2 above are just examples."
Yeah.
So
great.
On his website, on a section called The Future, he details with graphics his idea for the gas test, which obviously was never carried out. They ended up drilling a hole through one of them and sticking a camera with a light through it.
Yeah.
Okay. And they did find an open space behind it, but it was very small. And some short distance away was just another block, and it was a rough stone. Yeah. Supposedly, this is what they found. Because it's Hawass, I have my, and also because no other details were released. Like, so they ran up, they took this other robot and they ran it up the northern Queen's Chamber shaft that Gantenbrink was not able to get his to go all the way up, the one that has Dixon's rod in it. They ran it all the way up with a newer robot, 10 years newer or whatever. They ran it up that shaft and found another quote-unquote door at the end of that one. Okay. I don't know which door they drilled a hole in. I don't know if it was the northern or the southern side, but one of them they drilled through with that same robot. But unlike Gantenbrink, which he releases every detail in all these CAD drawings on his website of his entire study, no real details were released on this other one.
Yeah, just like Hawass didn't release the press release with all the details.
Right.
You know?
Okay. So, why the delay in probing beyond the door? Rudolph was often asked, why doesn't the work continue? The following section contains his response. Once again, it is important to read it bearing in mind that it reflects the situation in 1998. Several years had passed since the door had been discovered, yet to the outside world it seemed that there was little interest from the Egyptian authorities in finding out what lay beyond it. Okay, the nature of the find. 1. Can the nature of the find be determined safely? The result of the find is purely based on visual data. This data only has 2 dimensions in space. There are no parallels to this find. No ancient texts are known describing this arrangement. There are no known ancient objects that can be compared in detail with the details of the find. The answer, therefore, is no. 2. Do all directly involved parties have all available information? The digitally prepared visual data collected during the investigation showing details and evidence of Egyptological value was never evaluated by any Egyptologist. No request was ever put forward to obtain such data, nor was any interest shown to take part in the process of digital evaluation. The answer, therefore, is no. In other words, no Egyptologist ever, at least as of 1998, no quote-unquote authoritative Egyptologist ever even requested to
look at all
the data.
Yeah.
They're not interested. 3, are there any theories that can be backed by evidence about the nature of the find? Due to the points 1 and 2, there is no solid academic basis for any credible theory. The answer, therefore, is no. The need for further investigation. 4, can further research not be useful? There is still very little known about Old Kingdom pharaonic burials.
Right.
Yeah.
None.
Mainly because they keep expecting to find them in pyramids, and they're not there.
Yeah.
These so-called air shafts of the Great Pyramid appear to be closely related to such a pharaonic burial in ancient beliefs. The shafts had been misinterpreted as being only a few meters long and abandoned for nearly 1 century, so proving that interpretation cannot replace complete investigation. The northern shaft is not yet completely explored and remains largely as a still totally unknown area. Remember, again, this is 1998. This shaft could possibly hide evidence which would allow the whole nature of the find to be understood, but the answer still is therefore no. 5. Is a further investigation only of minor importance? We are dealing with one of the most important and highly exposed monuments in history. There is huge public interest in further investigation. Due to this and point 4, the investigation has major importance. So the answer is therefore no. It is not only of minor importance.
Right.
Feasibility. Are there technical problems in resuming further investigations? Remember, the questions are ones that Rudolph was asked. He's the one answering all these. Okay. So the answer, the robot Upout 2 is modified and tested for the exploration of the northern shaft of the Queen's Chamber and has been for more than 4 years. Additional plugins for remote sensing, probe collecting, and surveying have also been present for more than 4 years. Remote analyzing equipment was engineered 3 years ago and has been available for more than 2 years. The answer, therefore, is no. There are no further technical problems that he knew of. 7. Are there financial problems in resuming further investigation? No. I don't read all the details on that. No, there weren't. 8. Are there manpower problems in resuming further investigation? No. More details, but no. 9. Are there political problems in resuming further investigation? The robot Upout 2 is now housed at the British Museum in London and has been offered for further exploration to the Egyptian SCA, Supreme Council of Antiquities. The robot is already modified to be able to explore the northern shaft, which is the one that he couldn't get all the way up. Mm-hmm. The training of a person to maneuver the robot was equally offered to the SCA. Due to this, the SCA can resume the work without the involvement of any other nation. The answer is therefore no. Conclusion, the resuming of this expedition has been easily feasible for over 4 years at this point in time when this is being written. Summary of conclusions, the nature of the find cannot be determined. Further investigation is scientifically needed, and the resuming of the expedition has been easily feasible for 4 years. This pragmatic analysis has been forgotten about in the world of Egyptology. Downplaying ignorance, academic shyness, and common belief has replaced the process of science. This is a scandal.
Yep. Thank you, Zahi Hawass. You asshole.
So further on this page, there is a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even know about. Apparently, they completely screwed up the whole ventilation scheme that Rudolph set up. He offered several times to come out there and fix the problems that they caused with it. They refused him to come fix it. And at least as of the writing in 2002, the ventilation system still doesn't work properly.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
So it's getting damp in there.
Yeah, they screwed it up. They turned things off. They broke some stuff, and they wouldn't let him come fix it. And he said he would come out there and he could, in 2 days, repair the system. And they never let him do it. And the system, at least as of 2002, was still broken. Okay, so now I want to go to the Daily Grail because Greg at the Daily Grail was in email communication with Gantenbrink during this stuff, and he has some good insights into it. So he has an article on here called The Return of the Jedi. Right? Return of the Jedi. The Jed Pillar.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure, remember, this is dailygrail.com. This is a fantastic website. I'm sure you remember how just 18 short years ago, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent his robot Upout 2 up the so-called air shafts in the Great Pyramid of Khufu and discovered a quote-unquote door blocking the southern passage from the Queen's chamber. Well, it seems that things are progressing quickly, and the Egyptian authorities, led by Dr. Zahi Hawass, are already investigating them further. In a recent blog entry on his website, the Big Z informs us of the Jetty team, may the force be with him, currently working in the Great Pyramid. Zahi Hawass says, recently I went to visit the Great Pyramid of Khufu and observed the work of the Jetty team. Jetty is a joint international Egyptian mission, which I named after Jetty the magician, who Khufu consulted when planning the layout of his pyramid. The purpose of this project is to send a robotic tunnel explorer into the 2 air shafts that lead from the Queen's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Khufu to gather evidence to determine the purpose of these shafts. I selected the Jetty team during a competition that I coordinated to pick the best possible robot to explore the shafts in the Great Pyramid. I decided on a team sponsored by Leeds University and supported by Dassault Systems in France. With the help of the Jetty team, we hope to uncover the meaning of these air shafts by drilling through the doors that are blocking them. The team has been made to the team has something made to previous examinations of the air shafts in December of 2009. The team is hoping to gather as much evidence as possible to try to piece together the purpose of the air shafts, while at the same time ensuring that the Great Pyramid is not damaged in any way.
They have made 2 previous examinations, probably.
Yeah.
The number 2. Anyway.
Or made previous. Yeah, that's what it is. Made 2, right? Instead of, okay. It's a provocative expedition title, to say the least, despite constantly berating the quote-unquote pyramidiates out there for their speculations about the Great Pyramid. It seems one of Zahi's pet theories is lifted straight from the pages of Bavall and Gilbert's The Orion Mystery, namely the story in the Westcar Papyrus, which tells, am I saying that right? Papyrus?
Papyrus.
The Westcar Papyrus, which tells that Khufu consulted the magician Jetty regarding the secret chambers of Thoth. Here, Zahi's hypothesis about the story of Jetty and the Gantenbrink doors. So Zahi says, I would like to suggest that these doors hide Khufu's real burial chamber, and the bending in the north shaft was there to avoid the Grand Gallery. This means that the 2 shafts were carved after the construction of the Great Pyramid. We know that the ancient Egyptians tried very hard to hide the tombs by blocking the burial chambers with huge blocks or making the pyramid entrance so narrow that no one could enter. They also wrote curse inscriptions to try to stop anyone who wanted to enter and disturb the tombs of the pharaohs.
Where?
About 900 years after the reign of Khufu, we have a story called Khufu and the Magician. It tells the story of how Khufu brought the magician Jetty to ask him about the secret documents of the god Thoth, or Tahoti, the god of wisdom, so he could design his pyramid. Jetty knew everything about the secret chambers, but he did not reveal the secret. I therefore believe that the burial chambers were hidden behind these doors. Some great logic there, Zahi. For those interested in the original story about the discovery of the doors, make sure you head to cheops.org, a presentation of all of Gantenbrink's exploration and data, including interactive CAD presentations of the internal structure of the GP. Rudolph had his own theory about what may lie beyond the door, which is not mine to share. In fact, we had a great email discussion back in the day about a lot of the construction of the Great Pyramid, which I unfortunately lost in a hard drive crash in the days before I realized how valuable backups were. At least it finally looks like after almost 2 decades we have people working in the pyramid, as we've previously found that Zahi has talked this up plenty over the years with no action eventuating. Right. Some of the comments in here are hilarious. One guy says, if Zahi were a filmmaker, the credits would roll. A Zahi Hawass film, starring Zahi Hawass, directed by Zahi Hawass, produced by Zahi Hawass, cinematography by Zahi Hawass, gaffer, Zahi Hawass, catering by Zahi Hawass, etc.
Yeah. I can't stand that guy, man. God.
That was a comment by Rick MG. Okay, so next one, scientist. Scientists find suspected chamber hidden within the Great Pyramid. So this is also the Daily Grail, a much more recent article. The Great Pyramid of Giza remains one of the most impressive and enigmatic monuments ever built by human hands, despite being constructed at least 4,500 years ago. And the mystery that has surrounded the building through the millennia has led many to search the building for hidden chambers, hoping to discover treasure or esoteric secrets. In the last couple of decades, there has been much focus on the so-called ventilation shafts of the Queen's chamber. that when explored with a robot by Rudolf Gantenbrink in the early 1990s were found to have quote-unquote doors at the end of them. But in the last couple of years, a new exploration effort has offered a new way forward. The Scan Pyramids project has employed various high-tech, non-destructive methods, such as infrared thermography and muons radiography, to literally scan the Great Pyramid for cavities. And today, the Scan Pyramids, along with assisting institutions, are announcing a big find, both in terms of its news value and also the actual size of the discovery. In a paper in Nature, researchers have reported the discovery of a, quote, large void, unquote, at least 30 meters or 100 feet in length, above the Grand Gallery, a find which constitutes the first major inner structure found in the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. The void, unimaginably named the Scan Pyramid's Big Void, was first observed with nuclear emulsion films installed in the Queen's Chamber by Nagoya University and then reconfirmed using other methods by other institutions. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah,
because after they did it the first time, everybody was like, skirp, derp. I didn't know it was reconfirmed by other institutions.
According to the paper abstract, it says, this large void has therefore been detected with high confidence by 3 different muon detection technologies and 3 independent analyses. These results constitute a breakthrough for the understanding of Khufu's pyramid and its internal structure.
That was the other thing, too. They freaking skirp-derped the analysis of the findings.
Yeah.
So then they got 3 independent ones that also found the same. You know, that's cool.
While there is currently no information about the role of this void, these findings show how modern particle physics can shed new light on the world's archaeological heritages.
But what if it was a soul chamber, man? Soul chambers don't interact with physics.
Maybe souls do interact with muons. You don't know.
Yeah.
The researchers are being cautious not to call this a secret chamber, though that appears to be what they privately think it is. In a press conference today, researcher Medhi Tayyubi, who let the news of the discovery slip a few months ago, stated that the team was avoiding the word chamber. We know that it's a big void, but we're not calling it a chamber.
Yeah.
We know it's a void, but we're not calling this chamber a chamber.
Yeah, that's right.
But Tayyubi also noted that when you know the pyramids and the perfection of the pyramids, it is hard to imagine that this is an accident.
Yeah.
Interestingly, along with the discovery of the big void comes news that the research team has also confirmed a previous discovery of a void above the northern entrance gate. Could this be a secret passageway that leads to this big void above the Grand Gallery?
Yes. Yes.
Below is a video from the Scan Pyramids project that details the latest findings, including both the big void and the northern secret passageway, and I will link to this in the show notes.
So, I figured it out, man.
Hold on. Almost done here. So what comes next? Assisting the Scan Pyramids team is Jean-Baptiste Mouret of the ISIR Robotics Institute in France, who said details would be released next week of a small flying robot that could fit within a 1-inch wide hole to explore the void. Obviously, however, allowing drilling in the Great Pyramid is a sensitive matter and would require permission from the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities.
Thank God it's not Zahi Hawass anymore.
They've certainly got my interest. So, I tried to pull up Gantenbrink's CAD because I wanted to compare it to the Scan Pyramids drawings of what they found. Mm-hmm. And I was unable to make his CAD drawings on the website work. I used to be able to make them work. So
it's conspiracy, man.
If any of you listeners out there are able to make the CAD drawings work, please send us screenshots of what you're able to see. I want to see the cyber drawings of the Cheops shafts. Basically, if you go into his website, you get to the cyber drawings part. If you can pull up the CAD drawings, it should open up a JavaScript window, and you can see the CAD of all the data, including the displacements and other things that are in there. It's all together, and if you can get a screenshot, that would be fantastic because I would like to compare it to the Scan Pyramids data.
Yeah.
But looking at Gantenbrink's non-CAD drawings of what he, like, doesn't have all the minute details in it, but he has drawings on there showing you where the door on the southern side was found. It's relatively close to the outside of the pyramid, so it's hard to imagine that there's a large chamber there. I mean, it would be large, relatively speaking, but I'm not sure, but the door found on the northern shaft would probably exit directly into the void found by scanned pyramids, as far as I can tell without looking at the CAD. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to take another break, and we'll come back and continue on this topic. What was that?
You just blew my mind, man.
Listening to some new bumper music here from Kyle, playing the keyboard and some funky bass.
Yes, sir.
It's good shit.
Okay.
So like I was saying at the end of the last segment, I was not able to pull up Gantenbrink's CAD drawings, which I wish I could have, because I wanted to see the details about, you know, the minute details about the various, not just where the doors are, but like, you know, the stuff that the anomalies he was finding. It, like, for number one, the shifting of various blocks, implying that there are static forces elsewhere in the building that aren't explained by any known chambers. What else? The various, like the vertical joints or places where a shaft block and where both of the shaft blocks into the same place, which doesn't, in other places they're usually staggered.
Yeah.
So various places where static forces were being moved around by the pyramid builders, but we're in this tiny, like I was talking to the Stash about this, right? So I, of course, after doing the episode, I'm like, Stash, okay, you know, like what, and we were discussing about how it's sort of like imagine a skyscraper is totally buried, you know, just imagine a skyscraper that's like somehow it's completely buried under sediment. And so you don't have any access to the building at all, but you manage to get into one of the air vents and you're sending a robot through the air vent of this thing. And like, there's all this stuff going on in the building around the air vent, but you have to infer things by the way the air vent is constructed, right? Sort of like that. Or if you're running a robot in between the walls of a house, right? So you're running it along and you're like, okay, wait a minute, what, you know, I see a stud at every 24 inches, and then suddenly there's this big thick thing, and you're like, okay, so that implies that there's something load bearing here, or something maybe something is hung on the wall on the outside that's attached to this thing that we see, but you have to infer it, right? Like you were saying in that episode that the shafts provide you a sort of a map if you're able to.
Right, to deduce what this.
Right. And so Gantenbrink is studying all this stuff, and like I wasn't able to pull up the CAD drawings, but looking at his, you know, basic illustrations, it doesn't have all the details in it, but looking at the basic illustrations, the stuff that he was finding in the pyramid, at least the northern shaft, you know, well, he didn't find the northern door, the one that actually goes to over the Grand Gallery. He wasn't able to turn.
And unlike certain British Egyptologists, if I was in an attic and I was crawling around and I saw a board that had something on the side of it that said, like, with a little piece of plastic, it said General E, I wouldn't be like, that's the guy who built this house.
Yeah.
Whatever was after E was covered up by some other thing or sanded off of there. Haha, look, I've discovered in the attic the name of the person who built the pyramid.
Yeah.
The house was General E.
Yeah, it was General E. I also wanted to say to anyone who was, I've seen this reaction sometimes to some of Gantenbrink's data about shifted blocks and various incomplete things and other quote unquote shoddy work that, you know, that can sort of disappoint people who have this sort of picture of the pyramid as being this beautifully perfect thing. Well, there are Johnsons on every job.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you're one of them.
Right. Johnson is a floating name. It's whoever just really fucked up that job they were supposed to do. That's the Johnson. And like, you're not always, you know, the same guy isn't always, well, sometimes the Johnson is the same guy.
Yeah.
But basically the point is that every construction project has errors in it. If it was perfect, it wouldn't be human, right? Like if it was just perfect in every aspect, you would be like, it would be difficult. That would be very strange. But the fact that it has, you could still see the beauty of the overall design and the mind, like Gantenbrink talked about. He was very at home with what he saw as the engineering minds of the people who built this structure.
Right.
Right. And he's not disturbed by, shifting or shoddy work in this. He called it a Monday morning block, which is basically the same thing as saying like Johnson did this.
It's a Johnson block.
It's a Johnson block, right?
Because sometimes on Monday morning, you are Johnson.
That's right. So any building has this, like if you're crawling around between the walls and you're looking at stuff, you're going to find, just think of a house. You're going to find nails that miss the stud, things, small errors that doesn't take away from the overall construction project or the conception of it. In other words,
ever wonder why that one light bulb in your closet keeps blowing, and then you're crawling through the attic one day, and one of those nails
goes right
going right through that wire.
Power cord for that light,
and there's a big black mark on that wire. And occasionally, for whatever reason, the house shifts and it shorts out, and your light bulb blows.
And your light bulb blows. Yeah, Johnson put that nail in.
That's right.
So don't let the errors that were seen in these interior spaces that were never intended to be looked at by people, don't let that discourage you from the idea that the pyramid is a beautiful thing, because it is.
Yeah.
It's just that there are Johnsons on every job.
Yeah, and especially a job of that scale.
Yeah.
You're going to have many, 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 many Johnsons and many, 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 many Monday blocks.
Right.
It's just the nature.
Johnson can make a lot of small mistakes in a building project that takes 20 years to complete.
Right.
Right. You got a lot of time for Johnson to do some bad stuff.
That's right. Yeah, and 13 acres is a very hard area to
micromanage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Sometimes Johnson's not going to be being watched by his supervisor.
That's right. Johnson always seems to like the other side of the pyramid that I'm on. If I'm working on the west side of the pyramid, Johnson always seems to go work on the east side of the pyramid.
Yeah. I love the hammerstone thing. Hey, Johnson, where's your hammerstone? God dang it, Johnson, go get your fucking hammerstone. He's gone for 3 hours. He's trying to find a new one, trying to steal one from somebody.
Yep. So I have this the sort of theoretical model in my mind that I'm building of this pyramid now since the Upaut. The time. Okay, so I hit record.
Full disclosure.
And I only recorded myself. My microphone was the only thing turned on, and so we went through 16 minutes. We started the timer, and then I realized 16 minutes later, I'm the only one you guys are hearing. So we deleted that, and we started over. This is the only time we make edits.
Yeah. Is when there's a serious error.
There's a really serious error.
That can't be corrected, yeah. So my mic was not on, so I would have been audible, but barely. It would have sounded like I was on the other side of the room from my mic.
It would have sounded bad.
So we had to start over, and I forgot to start over the 30-minute sand timer that we have here. So the sands of time are inaccurate. We're just going to have to let it run out and whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, sorry.
I've got this other fancy digital clock.
Yeah. It's not as cool as the sands of time.
my theoretical model of the pyramid, current stage right now with all of this Gantenbrink.
Yeah, up to 2002. We're up to the Scan Pyramids project. Yeah,
Scan Pyramids. So now, like the Scan Pyramids project shows a void above the Grand Gallery, and we're talking about this possibility of a smaller pyramid that was designed for the Queen's Chamber to be the main chamber, and the shafts go to the exterior, which were cased, and then this new pyramid was built on top. So we've got this main entrance, the descending passageway, which almost seems to be carved through these blocks. Like I've heard it said, it carved through the blocks as though they built it all and then they cut the passage, or that the passage was built in. I don't know.
The descending passage?
Yeah. It was like cut through.
I know that the entrance that the tourists use is the one that was cut into the side of the pyramid.
There's one that's cut in, and then you can see where if you look at certain pictures of where they actually pulled the stone away from the outside, this crazy like angled 45s of staggered joints going up. It's beautiful.
Right.
This construction behind this crazy wall behind this other completely different angle at right angles to those angles. It's crazy looking. So you've got the descending passage that goes all the way through. So the new model would be this bigger exterior pyramid was built, and they opened the initial passage that entered the smaller one and modeled the new shaft to match it exactly and go all the way down into the subterranean chamber, and then cleverly cover the ascending passageway with a movable stone or whatever, however it was done.
The rotating prism stone.
Yeah. And then they put the giant granite plugs in there for whatever reason, basically to sort of close it off. But that leads to the Grand Gallery, right? Which I was imagining there's another pyramid that I saw on the Pyramid Code, which is on Netflix, I believe. That's a series. Great series. Go watch it.
Yeah.
The lady in there, one of the hosts, is visiting this other pyramid, and I can't remember what the name of it is, Watcher. But it's this other pyramid in the Pyramid Code. It's probably going to be really hard for you to find.
Yeah.
But it has an open, like the Grand Gallery, but it's this open trough. Like the pyramid was built, and the ascending passage, essentially, or descending passage, is completely open all the way to the sky.
Yeah.
So I was imagining that perhaps the initial pyramid had something like that in the Grand Gallery, and they corbelled this. They made a corbelled ceiling over the top of that to cover it, and then built the exterior pyramid on top of that, and perhaps made a new entrance up higher, as you said that the Scan Pyramids project may have detected.
Yeah.
Above the now existing entrance that leads into another similar type Grand Gallery that matches, because you can see that in the King's Chamber, they did something very similar. They made a King's Chamber like the Queen's Chamber, slightly bigger.
Right.
They made shafts like the Queen's Chamber shafts. Of course, they bent and went in different directions. They were still open for whatever reason, but it's almost like they were honoring the initial design of the pyramid.
I got you. Yeah. I agree with that. And like, I was thinking about this when we were talking about this, I don't know, last week. After doing the podcast, we were talking about how we also know that despite the fact that the entire Giza Plateau is flattened to within a 1/4 inch tolerance in any direction you care to measure or whatever, that the Great Pyramid itself is built on a mound.
Right. They didn't flatten that one.
Right. Why didn't they flatten that? Like, my idea is that the mound is in a very ancient tell.
Mm-hmm.
So that the people who built what we are now calling the smaller Queen's Pyramid, right? The Queen's Pyramid.
Yeah.
They built that on top of a very ancient tell that is the rubble or the mound of an even older construction that had the descending passage and the subterranean chamber in it. So somebody builds a pyramid or some sort of maybe a tower type or a stepped pyramid type structure on top of that. And then later somebody comes along and builds the Great Pyramid structure on top of that.
Right.
And that kind of coincides with my idea, and not mine, but the idea that people have put forward that I sort of agree with, that there are 3 stages of construction seen in these megalithic places around the world, in Peru, that guy and his son, I can't remember, Jesus Gamara, who talks about these 3 levels of these 3 different eras of construction, the oldest being the most massive and ancient, and then somebody came along later and was still building amazingly, but it's a different style, still megalithic, still polygonal and crazy, but not as big or as beautiful or as amazing as the original one. And then later on you have the Inca. So like there's multiple stages of construction visible at Giza in various different, not just the pyramids, but all these, like, so if you look at the Sphinx temple, there's definitely at least 2 stages of construction there.
Right.
And then the plateau itself is flattened, but then there's places where it was eroded out and they put basalt on top of that.
Similarly, they did
the pyramid of Menkaure is sheathed in granite that looks just like stuff you find in Peru that has the same knobs.
Right.
You know? Okay. So like the idea that there's multiple levels of construction of the Great Pyramid itself is not.
Those are the Shamir props. They put some rough, crappy stone up there. They prop it up with some boards, and then they hit it with the Shamir.
Hit it with the Shamir and just melts it into this beautiful glob. Yeah,
that's right.
Freaking fits
and it leaves
perfectly.
these little knobs on it where the logs were holding it in place. Yeah, those are the Shamir knobs.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah. So I have another sort of conflicting idea that I like as well. I like what you're saying, but there's this other idea that I like. Well, but the theory,
awesome
the idea.
What I'm saying is badass.
Yeah, and I like it. I like that. Of course I like it.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I didn't like it, it wouldn't be badass. So
You're right.
Watcher's not having any luck looking up that pyramid. So I'll have to actually go watch that show to find out what that pyramid was. And I actually told myself I was going to look into that pyramid more, but I haven't done it. So fail.
It's not the one that they call the incomplete pyramid.
I don't think
the one
so.
that Christopher Dunn and
that I know of.
David Hatcher Childress go down into. That's open to the sky.
Maybe it is.
Okay.
I just don't know. She named it.
Okay.
So
all right.
I don't know what it was. I'll have to watch it again. Pyramid Code. Anyway, this other idea that I also like is like the utilitarian idea, like that these things were necessary. The shafts were necessary for some function.
Right.
It wasn't soul shafts that are just like, oh yeah, we'll dig them for a while and then we'll block them off because you're done.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think they were burying anybody in there, so there was utility to whatever they were doing. Right. So I think again that if they had this original smaller pyramid and there were these shafts in there, and then they built the large one, they also needed shafts again because they were covering up the old ones that were no longer in use. That sort of conflicts with the idea that this mound underneath was sort of a quote unquote sacred site. Perhaps the mound, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That like it only conflicts in the way that if there was utility in the site itself, that perhaps they would have, instead of leaving this mound there when they're going to clear the whole plateau, maybe they revered it in some way. Like,
that's what I mean, yeah.
Oh, well, this was an ancient power plant that exploded and fell down. Well, we're going to keep all the rubble of the ancient power plant because we revere the people who built it first, and we're going to build the second one.
Well, and in the ancient Egyptians' accounts of their own histories, they have 3 stages of the civilization.
Yeah,
First, they're ruled by the gods.
It just seems like if you were an engineer and your plan was to build a functioning whatever, that you would try to optimize the starting point. And starting on a pile of rubble is difficult and hard to say how stable is this pile of rubble.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's why it conflicts a little bit.
Yeah, I see what you mean there.
So perhaps the mound.
What I'm saying is, well, what I would say
natural.
It could be, but they would still have to have a reason for leaving it there.
Exactly. But it makes more sense to me to leave a natural formation if you are doing something that requires whatever the feature was in the ground in the area at first, and you're like, well, let's not disturb that at all because it works for our purposes.
Right.
Whereas if it was a pile of rubble, that would be a little bit more difficult to imagine that, you know, your engineer is going to say, let's not, maybe all the blocks were like radioactive. So they're like, we'll use that power.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Well, I guess one of the possible ways of looking at that is that the later civilizations that came and built on top of it were not building or whatever the function was not that kind of function. In other words, that like, I guess what I would look at it is if the dynastic Egyptians, even the Old Kingdom guys, came along and did something like Khufu. Let's just say Khufu did have something to do with building something in the pyramid area. And you do see these in legends, like was it Thutmose, who was, there's some legend, I guess it came from one of the stelae beneath the Sphinx that he fell asleep there.
Yeah.
And then has the dream, and the Sphinx is like, I'm covered in sand. Come on, help me out here, guy, and I'll make you Pharaoh, right? And then he does all that. He brings this whole massive workforce to the plateau, cleans everything up, and he becomes Pharaoh, right?
Yeah. He uncovers the Sphinx.
Right. That there's this implication that that they are dealing with something that they know is ancient, but they don't know what it was really, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that the final structure that we're looking at now, if it was a casing over an older structure that was in itself a building over something even older, that the original intent has long been lost.
Right. So, yeah.
And in their
That's
own...
why I'm saying the two ideas sort of conflict, right? Like, I can't have the quote unquote third stage of the pyramid being some like engineering feat to serve a certain purpose in terms of power or whatever, some great thing that will benefit the society as a whole.
Yeah.
If that's the case, right? That they're not going to do that, or it's extremely hard to do that, and it's a mystery why they would do that.
Right.
Perhaps if the stage 2, the Queen's Chamber Pyramid was already done that way for whatever reason that they decided to do it. Of course, stage 3, they're like, we're not going to tear down that massive pyramid to build a bigger one. We're going to just build on top.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine that this mound underneath was originally decided to be preserved if there was supposed to be some... Unless they were just so ridiculously awesome at engineering, which they obviously were.
Yeah.
They were like, let's leave it for antiquity, or like for not antiquity, for posterity purposes, and let's just build on top because it's easy for us.
Right.
You know, to build a stable pyramid that's not going to collapse right on top of this pile of rubble.
Right.
In which case, they are far more awesome engineers than, you know, even... Anyway, that's totally possible. Because
is that right? Zawet El Arian? You think that's right? Because if that is the
Pyramid of Baca. Probably, dude. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know what it is, and I have to check.
Okay, because if that's right...
So what Watchers put up is unfinished northern pyramid of Zawet El Arian, also known as Pyramid of Baca.
Right.
That's probably it.
That is the one that I have the 40-page, whatever, the dissertation that guy wrote on, that he says it's not, he's like, I don't think this was ever a pyramid. It's that it digs down into the ground, has a big staircase, and then there's a huge, massive construction, and then the floor of it is like this weird jigsaw puzzle that if you don't know which blocks to pull out, you can't do it. It's because they all interlock in this certain way. I think that's the one that, he called it the, I can't remember what he called it, but Zawet El Arian. It's on the Giza Plateau, but on the other side. Yeah.
It's a total freaking mystery. I mean, it's just...
There's no pyramid there. It's dug down into the ground. There's no, but they think that it was an unfinished quote unquote pyramid because it has a retaining wall.
Okay.
But there's no pyramid whatsoever.
A socle?
Yeah. Well, there's an actual...
They built the socle, but they didn't put the pyramid.
There's an actual wall that goes all the way around it, but it's just a giant hole in the ground. That's, that somebody cut
this trough down in there.
Trough it down, and like he analyzes the walls and shows you how there's parts where the wall obviously eroded away, and somebody much later came along and replaced that corner with a block from somewhere else. Yeah. And it has this big...
That's it, Watcher, you found it.
That's it, yeah.
That's got to be it. So it's not a pyramid, but they call it a pyramid.
Right. They call it the unfinished pyramid because their idea is that they dug the descending passage in the subterranean chamber, and then they built the pyramid on top of that.
Right.
And that's what they think this looks like, except that it's enormous. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. Like building a pyramid over top of this huge hole in the ground would have been a true engineering feat. So,
as all the pyramids are. So.
Yeah, but this one's is really huge.
You don't know how big that other freaking opening in the pyramid. We're talking about it. So.
You're right, I don't.
These guys are freaking awesome. They were not slaves in butt flaps.
That's right.
With copper chisels and stone hammers. Johnson.
Okay, so I have one more article here from the Daily Grail. What time we got?
We're getting up there.
Okay, so
couple
I'll
more
do
minutes.
This, I'll
couple
do
minutes.
The next.
So yeah, I think it's all just. It's so fascinating. I'm glad to hear that the Scan Pyramids project is overcoming the script-derps.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they did the multiple confirmation analyses of different tests and having other people unconnected with it and analyze the data that they got.
So, and what a brilliant idea.
What a
brilliant idea. Muons.
I love the description, when I'm describing the way the plates are all stacked up, and you're like, these nerds, they're like, just like, what is that over in the corner? Just don't touch that thing. I don't know what it is, but don't touch it. Nerds are doing something with that. Whatever those are. Because it's got to be down there for like 9 months.
Right.
They just don't touch it. What is it? I don't know. But nerds are doing something.
Yes, nerds are doing something. So stay away from it.
Stay away from it.
Don't even look at it for too long.
Why will that mess it up? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't want it to.
The other nerds told me about things that happen with random number generators when you look at them. So just don't look at it.
Don't even think about it. Stop thinking about it. Pink elephants. Pink elephants.
Doorknob.
Doorknob. Yeah. So real quick, I was thinking of the idea, like, there are these sort of esoteric ideas that the pyramid was some sort of enlightenment generator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a box you can go lay in here, and it will just your mind.
Blow your fucking mind. Right. So imagine if there's multiple levels to the enlightenment stage, right? So you, as an initiate, you're brought in, the Hierophant is in the pyramid, and he leads you in the dark, or you have to make your way, like, knowing all this esoteric information, you have to go into the pyramid, and you, in the dark, you have to make your way to the king's chamber, right? Passing all these tests in the underworld or whatever it is.
And not getting crushed by blocks.
Right. You have to rotate things, and you have to know what to do, and based on these ancient stories. Then you get into the king's chamber, and you begin to, I don't know, you lay down in the box or whatever it is that you're doing, and you're doing some sort of remote viewing. And you're sending your remote viewing self, whatever that is, the consciousness, throughout the shafts that are in the walls, right?
Yeah.
Then when you graduate to the next level, you're down to
There's got to be two.
What?
There's got to be two shafts.
Yeah, because one side's got to be your body spirit.
That's right.
The other one has to be your mind spirit. But then eventually, when you graduate to the next level, then you're down in the queen's chamber, where there are no apparent shafts, and yet now that you've learned to do it from the guiding starlight or whatever it is from the shafts that exit of the king's chamber, now you're able to do it into these hidden shafts and get into the completely closed off hidden chambers using just your remote viewing mind self, whatever it is.
Oh, that's cool.
That the shafts themselves were meant to guide the consciousness of the person in the chamber to the hidden chambers.
Yeah, because somehow you could sense the difficulty in traveling through the stone.
Right.
Cold stone.
So
the other
the shaft leads you up to and that's why there's a seal there.
And that's why it's so perfectly aligned to north and south. Yeah. Like not the magnetic north and south, but the actual rotation, like the axis of rotation. Because there's an exact centrifugal force that you might be able to feel.
Yeah.
And so you would know what direction you were facing.
The Watcher says there is two shafts because one's exit only and the other one's entrance only.
Oh, okay.
If they aren't one way, you have head-on soul collisions, and that can get real messy.
Oh, yeah, that's not good. Watcher is an EMT, so he would know about this.
All right. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back for the final segment.
In a pyramid just like everybody else. I want my tombstone to read, I was not buried in a pyramid just like all the other badasses. Just kidding.
Yeah. This is not a pyramid.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? So in the Watcher's job of doing strange math for us for this show, He pointed out to us recently that as of episode 84, we have now published enough audio for you to listen to Snake Bros 7 days straight for 24 hours a day. That's pretty awesome, I gotta admit.
Yep.
It's pretty awesome. Thinking about that. That's
You might have 30% brain expansion after you're done, and you also will be possibly dead.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
This cadaver has quite a large brain.
He must have been listening to Snake Bros 7 days straight. All right. Final article here from the Daily Grail, not Daily Mail, dailygrail.com. Researcher suggests secret pyramid chamber might hold a meteorite throne. Is there a throne made from meteorites hidden in a secret chamber of the Great Pyramid? That is the headline that made worldwide news over the weekend, with stories in the Daily Mail, Russia Today, and other major media outlets. This story is based on a paper uploaded to rxiv.org in November 2017, titled "A Possible Explanation of the Void Discovered in the Pyramid of Khufu on the Basis of the Pyramid Texts" by Italian archaeoastronomer Giulio Magli. It should be noted that Magli is certainly not averse to putting forward rather speculative theories into the public sphere. We have covered a number of them on the previously here on the Grail, such as Machu Picchu, a map of the cosmos, astronomical alignments at Göbekli Tepe, and were Khufu and Khafre's pyramids built at the same time. And to be fair, Magli notes exactly this in the introduction to his paper, saying that is a first, admittedly highly speculative attempt at a possible explanation of the reason for the recently discovered mysterious void in the Great Pyramid on the basis of the funerary beliefs of the epoch. In doing so, Magli references architectural elements within the Great Pyramid, quote, which are purely symbolic, related only to the ideas on the afterlife, such as the 4 so-called air shafts that emanate from 2 of the pyramid's chambers, and the descriptions of the afterlife that can be found in the Egyptian funerary documents known as the pyramid texts. Magli points out that one particular passage from the pyramid text references an iron throne as being part of the Pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. So this is a quote from the text. "The doors of the sky are open for you. The doors of Nut are thrown open for you. The doors of the firmament are thrown open for you. Endure, says Isis. In peace, says Nephthys, when they see their brother. Raise yourself, loose your bonds, throw off your dust, and sit on this, your iron throne."
Yep. Well, there's 4 shafts in that description. The doors, plural,
Yep.
of Nut are open for you.
The doors
and
of the firmament.
doors of the firmament
Yeah.
are open for you. 4 doors.
Yeah. From this, Magli makes a rather large leap into the idea that this iron throne might sit within the void found in the Great Pyramid. Many other similar utterances are mentioned the same process, and some also specify that the king will sit on the throne after crossing specifically the northern doors, and that a stairway gives access to the throne. For instance, again in PT 536, that's Pyramid Text 536, I think that's line 536, we read, "May the honored ones clap their hands at the stairway of your throne." Observe now that it is not uncommon for objects mentioned in the pyramid text to be documented in the archaeological records. An important example are the instruments mentioned in the opening of the mouth ceremony, a forked knife, an adze, a serpent-like knife, which are all known archaeologically. May the Iron Throne have been a real object in Khufu's burial equipment. If Khufu's Iron Throne is really located in the newly discovered chamber, it was put in place during the construction of the pyramid and never accessed since. It may well be located at the central end of the void, which, according to the prospection, lies directly on the vertical axis from the apex of the pyramid, crossing the end of the Great Gallery, the so-called Big Step, and the Queen's Chamber underneath. The chamber might thus be a non-functional copy of the Great Gallery, with an ascending staircase and throne at the uppermost end. Magli also suggests that Khufu's spirit might have been meant to access this chamber via the symbolic door found at the end of the northern lower air shaft first explored by Rudolf Gantenbrink. as it may be connected with the lowermost end of the sealed chamber. As for perhaps the most eye-catching part of the headline, Magley notes that if the throne was made of iron, it would have been iron from a meteorite that was used, as this was the source of iron in ancient cultures until the invention of iron smelting. For more on this topic, see our previous articles, Ancient Egyptians Mined Iron from Space, and King Tut was buried with a dagger of extraterrestrial origin. And Magley suggests that it might look similar to the gold sheet throne of Khufu's mother, Hetepheres, except lined with iron sheets. All in all, the paper is constructed out of what?
I have a lot of problems with that idea.
All in all, the paper is constructed out of a large number of speculations piled on top of each other. Oh, wow. Stacks
of assumptions.
A fun topic for sure, and one that I find extremely interesting and worth speculating about, but probably not publishing officially as a paper, and certainly not one that should have been used as the source for major media coverage.
Meteor coverage.
Major meteor coverage. So I remember Hawass saying something about that too, about how he thought that they may find the Iron Throne of Khufu on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
But going back to your idea, or the idea that the pyramid was cased multiple times, that some earlier structure was cased, that the picture that I have in my mind of them drilling through and seeing this rough stone on the other side, I'm kind of wondering about that. Like, you have to keep in mind that we're still looking at this crazy angle, right? So this picture of this rough stone, the backside of some rough stone on the other side, but there's a void there, right? So it's very strange for me. I'm trying to picture how that would work. But I don't know what the exterior of the shafts look like on the exterior of the pyramid. So like, because of the way the shaft block structure is tilted, if that was on the original old pyramid, or let's say you removed most of the casing stones of the old pyramid so that you could build your new one onto it without having a major structural issue of your entire new pyramid wanting to slide off the old pyramid, right? So you remove a lot of the casing stones and then you sort of stack your new pyramid exterior part on top of that. The pictures of Gantenbrink sort of standing around on this, there's a platform where the shaft blocks come out. Okay. So maybe that's what it is. There's just a small void there where they were kind of building around where the old shaft exited. And you could have left whatever original ceilings block was in the end of the shaft without leaving all the casing stones on the pyramid itself.
Yeah.
Or they may have built that door, quote unquote, specifically. Like when they moved their casing stones, they also uncovered the shaft and they had to seal it by sticking something in there that was symbolic, and that's why the seals were on the other side.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No one knows.
But I think that a good way to do this is to look at the greater status of all the structures around it, right? Because whatever it is, you can't view the Great Pyramid in isolation. It isn't isolated. There are other enormous pyramids right next to it. There are smaller satellite pyramids that are, there's 3 over here and there's 3 over there or whatever in that alignment. And then there's of course, the mastabas. Then there's the Osiris shaft or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's the big chambers where the boats were buried in, quote unquote, boats, buried, soul boats. And then, of course, the
Crane tracks.
The what? The what?
The crane tracks. Yeah.
Crane tracks.
That's where the crane tracks.
Yeah, the crane. Yeah, the crane sockets. Yeah, the crane tracks.
Crane tracks.
And then there's the causeways.
Can I have this?
Yes, the causeways, and the Valley Temple, Sphinx itself.
Yeah, I agree. You can't look at it in isolation, but
everyone wants to.
Yeah, it's just like the only thing I've been looking at for a while.
But I guess as far as I can tell, that's about all of the data that I've been able to pull up without getting Gantenbrink's CAD files and being able to look at his CAD drawings, which I think there must be something wrong with his website, which is not surprising. It's very old.
So the other idea, like comes to mind when you're saying not to look at the pyramid in isolation, is the preservation of the knowledge, the accumulated knowledge of mankind, or whatever, the intelligent beings on the planet.
Yeah.
So you have this Sphinx. It's obviously a symbolic carving structure, yet it might hold something more, right? There's chambers underneath.
Right.
So there's this combination of, architecture, beauty, artwork, along with some function.
Yeah.
That seems like the purpose of which seems paramount to the culture that was, engaging in these endeavors.
Yeah.
So a power plant is a great idea because that is a type of endeavor that a culture would engage in that has a very important purpose.
Yeah. That everyone can benefit from, and thus a large scale effort would be, plausible.
Right. Another plausible thing would be, a library of sorts. You would, under certain circumstances, perhaps knowing the possibility of destructive forces far beyond your ability to prevent, that you might engage in some activities such as building massive pyramids.
Yeah.
And then
arcs.
Have artistic works integrated into the process, mathematics integrated into the process, so that the whole thing, no matter what part of it was destroyed, if the casing stones were all gone that you carved all the texts into, you might still discover some knowledge about the architecture and mathematics and whatever engineering expertise of the people. If the Sphinx itself crumbled, you would still have this pit, this enclosure that would be it would be harder to destroy it.
Yeah.
Also give you an idea of the antiquity of the thing.
Right.
And that there might be something underneath.
Yeah.
Then you would have the blocks that you took out of the enclosure that you built this other massive temple with that might preserve some other. So it's like, no matter where you go, and then the tunnels that lead from this thing to that thing and this and that, it's like, you can look at it both ways, like power plant type idea that benefits the society now, or repository of knowledge that benefits all societies as long as you could possibly make it do so.
Yeah.
Which would lead you to these crazy engineering feats, that seem ridiculous when you're thinking about just like one maniacal ruler that's like, I just throw my freaking corpse in there.
Yeah.
It's retarded. I mean, seriously.
I mean, they're the idea that there's some kind of pharaonic ascension, I do think that is extant in the text, that there's all this talk, but it's hard to tell
if that's metaphor.
Right.
And also if that's quant stuff too.
Yes. Them quant stuffing something much older.
Yeah, which is, and we talked about this in a previous podcast, where you could see how the idea of this idea of preservation is quant stuffed into like, oh, you mean we can live forever if we preserve ourselves?
Yeah.
And it was really a large, like you're thinking, the initial idea is like, hey, we need to preserve our knowledge so that our species can live on forever.
Yeah.
We're trying to, break free of these forces that will destroy us, right? So that you can see how that could be interpreted to this idea of death, where it's like, well, I need to break free of the forces that are destroying my body, and therefore build this massive pyramid and stick myself in there and dry myself out, and make sure there's nothing desecrates my corpse.
Drop my corpse in a pool of mercury after wrapping me in toilet paper. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you can see how that much later cultures showing up and seeing these things and starting to do their own research, like way long ago, when perhaps, you know, they may have been, they were obviously an enlightened group of people.
Yeah.
And they may have been enlightened in part by what they found in this area and learned from it. And they learned this idea, but at the same time, they're interpreting ancient texts as we are today.
Yeah.
And saying, what the hell were these guys talking about?
Right.
They obviously were geniuses based on what we found of their, you know, like physical structures and stuff they left behind. Something to study and something to learn from. And so we find all these things and we're trying to interpret them, and we're interpreting them the best we can. Other people interpret them differently and we get insights from it. So it's like they might have had the same situation going on, and some of them are like, you know, obviously this is like, you know, the quest for immortality.
Yeah.
And that becomes sort of the popular way of looking at what they had found. And so they go restoring all these ancient sites, and then while learning from them, you know, use the same language or a modern, you know, a more modern version of the language to write their story.
Yeah.
And then start engaging in the same types of activities, because obviously whoever built this stuff, you want to emulate them.
Yeah.
As you can see, many, many cultures did over thousands of years when they came into contact with Egypt.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at language in general and see how, you know, these cultures that had no written language would then start trading with Egypt, and then suddenly they would start creating their own alphabets and whatever, and start pulling words that, you know, they had no prior need for this word.
Right.
But they come into contact with Egypt and they start learning all this stuff, and then, well, they need a word for that.
Yeah.
That same concept that they've never had before in their life. So you can see how they like start adding more characters, and some of the characters are real similar to the Egyptian character for that thing. So you can follow this path of like emulation of all these cultures to this incredibly ancient source of knowledge. And yet all these cultures have different ways of interpreting it. So it's not hard to see that the original people that may have come and found what was there, that they did the same thing.
Yeah. The other thing that we have to remember is that, like, for a long time, there was no translations of the hieroglyphs.
That's right.
We had all these papyrus and all these carvings in these various temples or whatever they are. You know, mortuary temples of this guy or that guy, this pharaoh, that pharaoh. And we could see them all over the place, but nobody knew how to translate them.
Right. Because the old translator was hidden over here. Somewhere in New York.
That's right. The frickin' special...
Yeah, the special translating armor.
Yeah.
You put this breastplate on and this helmet.
Yeah.
And you can translate
You can
any language.
comprehend this written language.
Oh, that's total BS. Well, guess what, folks? Google is making one of those.
Right. But they eventually found the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
And this is what I was getting at. Up until the Rosetta Stone, we had no way to translate. But the Rosetta Stone had Demotic, Greek, Ancient Greek, and hieroglyphs on it. And they all said the same thing, supposedly.
Right.
We don't even know. I mean, what if the hieroglyphs says something totally different?
That's
And
what I was
all of
thinking.
our translations are totally bullshit, right? But the point is that the Rosetta Stone was Hellenistic, from the Hellenistic period.
Yeah.
After Alexander the Great took over Egypt, basically. So, at minimum, we're talking about thousands of years later than some of these texts we're trying to read with that same translation. What language stays the same for thousands of years? None. I mean, just go try to read Old English from like freaking 1600s. It's almost impossible. And I can read English really well. I'm like, I can barely comprehend what the hell they're talking about, you know? So you like imagine thousands of years from now, somebody trying to read something that was written now in English using an English translation from there. It just doesn't. So the translation of the text, and then there's like the pyramid text, for example, or the Edfu building texts, where the scribes themselves were writing into stone things from the ancient documents that were falling apart that they didn't understand, that they say, we don't really know what this is talking about. We don't even know what some of these symbols mean anymore.
Right.
These are ancient Egyptians. In the Edfu library, which later became, it was a structure that was used for thousands of years, and at some point was a stable and had horse manure in it, and then later on it was like a campsite for, you know, who knows how many people, and it was just filled with refuse or whatever. But a long time ago, it was something else, and for a while, it was a library, and the scribes that were in there tried to preserve some of the documents that they had that were so old at that time that they were falling apart, and they couldn't read them, really. They were just directly trying to copy the symbols, and they didn't understand what they said.
Yeah.
So you imagine that we're using this Rosetta Stone translation of these hieroglyphs on stuff that's old, and those people may have been copying older things, and just it's just,
Yeah. We don't really know.
we have no
I mean,
idea. Yeah,
we have words that we use every day, English words that we don't really freaking know what they mean. We just have modern connotations.
yes,
I mean, like that's why I love etymology. You start looking back through the same word and how it's changed, its meaning has changed and evolved over all this time.
right.
And that you have to think, well, first of all, every single alphabetical symbol had multiple layers of meaning.
Yeah,
So this is what begat the combination of the symbols into a word, which was supposed to give you some more complex idea of something, or say more specific, as opposed to these general ideas that each character represented.
right.
So you get the word, and now it's a more specific idea, but it's a combination of all these other multi-layered, generalized concepts, and then you put those together in sentences, and then you can further, you know, be further specific about whatever you're saying.
Yeah,
It's on and on and on, but we lose after, you know, just freaking 20 years
Yeah.
of these words coming up, and they're like people like making sort of, you know, how a word sort of can change its meaning, and now we're using the word as this joke, but
Yeah.
the joke becomes so like a popular meme, for example,
Yeah.
that becomes the new meaning of the word from
Right.
then on.
Yeah.
And in 100 years, nobody's going to, you know, you have to do a lot of research to figure out, oh, well, this word originally meant this, but then it was used as a joke in this way that became extremely popular. And then
Yeah.
now that's what the word means.
Right.
Forever.
yeah,
So it's
yeah. Language
impossible.
evolves.
Yeah, it's impossible to know that any of our translations of these things. This is why I love to read ancient texts and try to wipe the slate clean of.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways to do it.
And I mean, you could see that the Egyptians, at least the ones that were putting the inscriptions on stuff, were trying to do this. They were illustrating their texts as well.
Yeah.
So you have like millions of characters, tiny characters, but next to them are these large images also.
Right.
You know, and we look at the images and like, why is that guy wearing a bowling pin hat?
There's probably some nerd that was like, trust me, this is a brilliant way to convey our ideas to the future, no matter what language they have.
Right. Exactly.
And then we're like, what the Nobody knows what they're talking about.
Right. And that's why, like, you know, I think of the project, there's the project of like, how do we tell future generations, they're 10,000 years down the line, how do we warn them away from our radioactive waste?
Yeah.
You know, and they had this big project of like, how can, like, so we build this chamber deep beneath the earth, right? This stone chamber. And then we have these sealed doors all around it. And then we've got these giant carved warnings into the side. I'm like, no one's going to believe you, whatever
Right.
it says.
No. What's going to happen is a couple of British guys are going to go blow a hole in that
Right.
freaking
And they're
wall.
all going to die. People are going to be like, it's not a curse. Oh my God.
That's right.
Even though all the symbols seem to say that there's a curse. And if you open this, you're going to die.
The locals be like, no, sir. It's a curse. It probably. Oh, Papa Gosh.
Yeah. Papa
Give me
Cock,
the dynamite.
ball
man.
to dash.
All right, you take the plunger.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it says.
Come on, Skibby, let's go in the hole now.
Yeah. I just, once you study ancient stuff enough in archaeology, you understand that no one's going to believe whatever your carvings say.
That's right.
They're going to think it was like spiritual, superstitious bullshit.
So what we should do really is like put the big chamber in there full of all the radioactive waste.
Yeah.
And then we start putting all the seals in, right?
Yeah.
But before that, we just like put a bunch of dirt and just like make it look as natural as possible. Then we start putting seals in and we put this massive chunk of like amazing gold and just put a dead body in there and just all that stuff and then put all the seals and like don't go in.
Yeah. So they get to the gold and the dead body and they're like, we found it.
Yeah, that's right. And then they're done.
They never
no
get to
more
the-
research,
Right.
right? And there will be all these freaking nerds like us that are like, there's more in there.
Yeah. That's right.
They'll do these freaking quantum scans and they're
Yeah.
like, I think there's another void. And all the freaking
there's we
skirtards
already
will be like,
know what
no.
it is. Yeah, we found the golden freaking
the best-
sarcophagus of the. Yeah.
The best way to do it. It's the best way to do
So
it.
you think that's what it is? We're going to get into this scam pyramids void and find radioactive waste.
That's right.
Right. That's what
we're
it was.
we're really going to release
We're really
the
going to
curse.
release the curse of the Pharaoh.
That's right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It
Johnson forgot to put the freaking corpse in the box before they sealed it off. It was his job. Golly.
Man, don't give that job to Johnson. Oh man.
Look, Johnson, there's a corpse wrapped in toilet paper over there. Just put it in the box and come back out.
Yeah. Johnson, there's a corpse wrapped in toilet paper in the third barn. Go get it and put it in the box.
Yeah.
God. Oh man.
All right.
We about done?
Yeah.
I think we're done. That's a good follow-up episode. I wanted to get the rest of the story out on that. So
Yeah.
just remember there's a Johnson on every job. So yeah, you're going to find imperfections in any structure no matter what. So you guys can... Let me pull
I
out
want to
my-
give a shout out first to to the C Word podcast.
Yeah.
Dudes.
Dudes.
Dudes. I can't imitate you guys yet, but I'm
Yeah,
working.
we're
on it.
going to work on it.
So you guys are badass. C Word podcast, folks, check it out. I listened to the two most recent episodes and they're great. And I
yeah, the
laughed my ass
Y2K
off.
episode and the Atlantis episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I laughed my ass off. So it's good stuff. There was one part where you guys gave us a shout out. It was totally awesome, and I really appreciate it. And you mentioned somebody. I don't know y'all's names yet, so somebody mentioned that
One of you guys.
One of you guys mentioned that Brothers of the Serpent would be a freaking wicked badass
Like
death metal band.
Death metal band name. Yeah. Sounds like they would be like smoking blunts and ripping it in Drop C or something like that.
That's freaking genius. Our first album is going to be called River of Metal. It's about a train.
That's right.
No, but I want to tell you that we don't play death metal, but we do play rock and roll.
Yeah.
So check out the rock and roll band is called $50 Dynasty, and you can find a couple albums out there and a few other releases on iTunes, and
CD Baby.
CD Baby is our distributor. You can get them from there, but also they're on Spotify. You can stream them and stuff. You don't have to go buy them. But the Prisoner EP is there's Kings and Thieves, which is our oldest album, and then the Prisoner EP is newer, much better quality, and then the most recent thing we did was just a dual song release, sort of like an A-side, B-side single, On Down the Road.
Yeah.
So check those out. Check them out.
It's not death metal, but it's definitely rock and roll.
Yeah, it's rock and roll. Check it out. And
You can, the website is $50dynasty.net.
or .com, either one. We got them
Yeah.
both. But yeah, so all this music, the bumper music is like random techno that I make whenever I'm like going on a road trip or something. I bring my computer and just like make some techno.
Yeah.
And then a lot of other just, just unfinished material that I'll just come into the studio and on the weekends and just like start throwing down on something. So I like to actually, now that we have the podcast, I actually focus on making bumper music, and I'll call up some of my buddies. One of them he's freaking badass on the bass. So I like the funk song at the end of the podcast. And I'm like, bro, let's lay down some funky bumper music, dude. Call him up. He'll come visit off of his hill.
Yeah.
Come on over to my hill. We'll lay down some funky shit. But yeah, check out $50 Dynasty. Anywhere music can be found.
That's right. And all of you listeners out there, check out the C Word. They are awesome. And you can find them on Twitter at CWordPod.
Yeah. Great. Hilarious podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for the shout out too. That was badass.
Yeah, that was really cool to hear that.
And I love the concept of the podcast too. That's the other thing I think is genius is like the main guy. Again, I'm bad with the names, but he's like, I'm all into conspiracies. And so I've done all this research on this conspiracy, and then I'm going to invite my friends over, and they have no idea what I'm going to talk about, and they're going to sit at the table, and he's going to try to convince them that all this conspiracy is true. Real shit.
It's genius. So we kind of do the same thing. Like we have this back and forth ongoing deal of like, I'm doing some research on something, and I'm like starting to blow my mind with it, and I'm like, do I tell Kyle about this? Or do I just do it on the show and blow his mind on the show? So I keep it secret from him. And so I'm like, all right, bro, check this out. And he has no idea what I'm talking about. We get down here and he's like, what's the topic? And I'm like, okay, check this out. Bam. And then I blow his mind. Sometimes we will tell each other what we're looking into. And so we can do it that way. But
I try to do the same thing. And then oftentimes I'm like, I get freaking deep into the rabbit hole and I'm like, I need help. So I'll spill the beans. Like, this is what I'm thinking, man.
So we'll bounce stuff off of each other before the show sometimes, but sometimes we save it, wait, and blow the guy's mind on the show. It's cool. So everybody check out the C Word. They are awesome. And I forgot to give a shout out to Where Did the Road Go last time when I was giving shout outs to podcasts. Where Did the Road Go is awesome. We follow them on Twitter. You can find them on Twitter as well. And I've been listening to them for years, and they are great, along with Grimerica, Mysterious Universe,
Mike and
Maurice's Mind Escape. Check them out as well.
Yeah, I just checked out. I just listened to the most recent episode of Mike and Maurice's too, and I'm gonna go through all y'all's libraries and just check all y'all's stuff out. I like Mike and Maurice. They're funny to me too. It's great. But I was kind of focusing on the C Word podcast right now. I'll get through y'all's stuff. Don't you worry. But, thank all of you guys.
Yeah, thank all of you guys so much, and we are very gratified to be connected with you guys on Twitter. It's awesome. So you can get a hold of us.
Great conversation going on out there.
You can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Comment there. There's the encyclopedia and the glossary.
That's right. Follow us on Twitter at SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS.
And please share the shows. It really helps us out. I'm trying to spread the word here.
That's right. And you can hit the donate button on the website to donate to our pyramid scheme, which is a scheme to send us straight to pyramids.
Because, damn it, we need to get
to pyramids. It's obvious.
And thank you all who have donated.
Yes.
And we are going to be coming up with, we're working on a scheme for the people donating to give you extra content.
That's right. Sort of a Patreon idea.
That you'll actually like.
Yeah. Content that'll be actually, you might want to pay for it. Yeah. It'll be a deal. It'll be a good deal. So we're working on that, like a sort of Patreon style thing. We don't know if we're going to go Patreon yet, but the idea of like donating and getting special content, we're working on that. So look forward to that in the near future.
Yeah, and reviews also help. So that's akin to donating.
That's right.
Spread the podcast.
That's right.
Give us reviews. 5 stars, even if you hate it.
That's right.
You can write terrible review, but 5 stars.
I hate this 5-star podcast. And also, last but most certainly not least, History Shift, Brandon Ricks, who has been immensely helpful to us. We met him on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @HistoryShift. He has a blog now, historyshift@blogspot.com. And he also has a YouTube channel where he has been posting videos about Atlantis, and he has a whole library of other people's videos that you can check out. But this guy has been basically taking all of our podcasts and the pictures that we put in the show notes and turning them into YouTube videos and posting them for us on YouTube and organizing them in our YouTube channel. And he's basically running our YouTube channel, and he is just so amazing. God, just thank you so much, bro. We love you, and hope to meet you someday. I think it will happen. So anyway, everybody check him out. History Shift. Check out his blog. Check out his YouTube page. And thank you so much, bro, for all the work you've been doing for us. We can't thank you enough. And also all of you listeners.
But thanks.
We can't thank you enough, but thanks.
But thanks, Red.
But thanks. Seriously. And all of you listeners, of course, we love you so much.
We love you. Thank
very
you
much. That's right. Good night, Adamu.
Give
Get
up.
back to work.